The crash warning lights blinked red across the damaged control panel as Hyunwoo pulled himself from the pilot seat. His research vessel had torn through the forest canopy like a falling star, leaving a trail of broken trees and scattered metal. Behind it, the ship now lay tilted against a massive rock formation, its hull cracked open like an egg. Hyunwoo wiped blood from his forehead and checked his injuries. A few cuts and bruises, nothing serious. He had been lucky. The emergency beacon was still working, sending out a distress signal to any passing ships. But in this remote part of the galaxy, rescue might take weeks or even months. The forest around him was unlike anything he had seen during his years as a marine biologist on Earth. Tall, purple trees stretched toward a pale green sky, their leaves shimmering with an odd silvery light. Strange bird-like creatures with 4 wings called to each other from the branches above. The air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with something sharper that made his nose tingle. Hyunwoo spent the first hour gathering supplies from the wreckage. He found his emergency pack, some preserved food bars, a water purifier, and basic tools. The ship's main computer was damaged, but he managed to pull up some data about this moon called Calith. It orbited a gas giant and had breathable air, normal gravity, and plenty of water. The information seemed promising until he read the warning notes about dangerous predators. On his second day, while setting up a simple shelter near a stream, Hyunwoo heard sounds that made his blood freeze. Deep growls echoed through the forest, coming from multiple directions. The sounds were getting closer. He climbed into a tall tree just as the first creature appeared. It was enormous, standing nearly 8 feet tall on 4 powerful legs. Its body was covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb light, making it hard to see clearly, even in daylight. The creature had a wolf-like head with intelligent yellow eyes and teeth that gleamed like white daggers. Blue patterns glowed softly along its neck and shoulders, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. 4 more of these creatures emerged from the forest, surrounding the tree where Hyunwoo hid. They moved with deadly grace, their claws leaving deep marks in the soft earth. These had to be the Velkari that the ship's computer had mentioned, apex predators that hunted in packs. The largest one, clearly the leader, sniffed the air around Hyunwoo's shelter. This one had scars across its muzzle and a more complex pattern of blue markings. Its yellow eyes looked tired and desperate. Hyunwoo watched as the pack searched his campsite. They knocked over his water containers and scattered his supplies. But they did not destroy everything. They seemed to be looking for something specific. Food, he realized. They were searching for food. The leader suddenly looked up at the tree where Hyunwoo was hiding. Their eyes met, and Hyunwoo felt his heart stop. The creature could have easily climbed up to reach him, but instead, it just stared. There was something in those yellow eyes that surprised him. Not hunger for a hunt, but simple exhaustion. The leader took a step toward the tree, then stumbled. Its legs shook and it nearly fell before catching itself. The other pack members moved closer, making worried whining sounds. Now Hyunwoo could see what his fear had hidden before. These predators were starving. Their fur was dull and patchy in places. Their ribs showed through their skin. The smallest one, a female with gentler features, had a bad limp and moved very slowly. They were not here to hunt him. They were here because they were desperate. Hyunwoo made a decision that went against every survival instinct he had. He climbed down from the tree. The pack tensed as he approached, but they were too weak to react quickly. The leader tried to growl, but the sound came out as more of a wheeze. Hyunwoo stopped 10 feet away and slowly reached into his emergency pack. He pulled out 3 protein bars and unwrapped them. The sweet smell made all 5 creatures lift their heads. Hyunwoo placed the bars on the ground and stepped back. The pack looked at him, then at the food, then back at him. The leader sniffed the air, trying to understand what this small alien creature was doing. Finally, hunger won over caution. The injured female limped forward and carefully picked up one of the bars. She ate it in 2 bites, and her eyes widened, with surprise at the taste. The others quickly took the remaining bars. It was not nearly enough food for creatures their size, but it was something. The leader looked at Hyunwoo with what might have been gratitude. Over the next hour, using simple gestures and basic first aid supplies from his pack, Hyunwoo managed to clean the injured female's wounds. She was too weak to resist, and the others seemed to understand that he was helping. He used antiseptic gel and bandages designed for human use, but they seemed to work on alien biology as well. As the sun began to set, painting the purple forest, in shades of gold and orange, Hyunwoo learned the names of his new companions. The leader touched his chest and made a sound that resembled Taemin. The injured female was So Young. The others were Ji-hai, Dong-soo, and an older male called Woo-jin. They understood that his name was Hyunwoo, though they pronounced it with clicks and growls that made it sound very different. That night, the pack made their camp near his shelter. They could have killed him easily, even in their weakened state, but they chose to stay close instead. Hyunwoo realized that these creatures were not just predators. They were intelligent beings with their own culture and social bonds. As he lay in his small shelter, listening to the soft breathing of the alien pack around him, Hyunwoo began to form a plan. These creatures were starving because they're old. Ways of hunting were not working anymore. But perhaps a human who understood both predators and prey could teach them something new. Perhaps this crash landing was not a disaster after all, but the beginning of something incredible. The morning sun painted the forest in warm, golden light as Hyunwoo woke to the sound of growling stomachs. The Velkari pack had spent their second night near his shelter, but their brief meal from yesterday was already forgotten by their hungry bodies. Taemin paced restlessly while So Young lay weak and tired against a fallen log. Hyunwoo knew they needed a real source of food, and fast. His emergency supplies would not last long enough to feed 6 beings, especially when 5 of them were large predators. He needed to find a way to help them hunt successfully, or they would all starve together. The stream where he had been getting water was wider than he first thought. Following it downhill for 20 minutes, Hyunwoo discovered that it opened into a clear pool surrounded by smooth rocks. The water was so clean he could see straight to the bottom, and what he saw there made him smile. Fish. Lots of them. They were unlike earth fish, with bright silver scales and fan-like fins that glowed softly blue. Some were as long as his arm, swimming lazily in the deeper parts of the pool. Others darted quickly between the rocks in large schools. It was perfect. Hyunwoo returned to find the pack watching him with hopeful eyes. Using gestures and simple words, he tried to explain that he had found food. Taemin understood first, his ears perking up with interest. The others followed as Hyunwoo led them back to the pool. The moment the Velkari saw the fish, their hunting instincts took over. Taemin let out a roar and charged straight into the water, followed by Ji-hai and Dong-soo. They splashed and thrashed, trying to catch the fish with their claws and teeth. The result was chaos. The fish scattered in all directions, hiding under rocks and in the muddy water that the aliens had stirred up. After 10 minutes of desperate struggling, the 3 hunters emerged from the pool empty-handed, dripping wet, and more frustrated than before. "No, no, no," Hyunwoo said gently, shaking his head. The pack looked at him with confusion. How could there be so much food right there, yet impossible to catch? Hyunwoo picked up a straight branch that had fallen from a nearby tree. Using his knife, he carefully carved one end into a sharp point. The Velkari watched with growing interest as he worked, especially Woo-jin, the elder, whose yellow eyes followed every movement. When the simple spear was finished, Hyunwoo walked slowly to the edge of the pool. The fish had returned now that the water was calm again. He stood perfectly still, holding the spear ready, and waited, and waited, and waited. Dong-su, the youngest of the pack, made an impatient whining sound. Ji-hai flicked her tail with annoyance. These predators were used to quick action, not patient observation. But Hyun-woo remained motionless like a statue by the water. Then, in one quick motion, he struck. The spear plunged into the water and came up with a struggling fish impaled on its point. The Valkyrie stared in amazement as Hyun-woo calmly removed his catch and placed it on the rocks. "Patience," he said simply, pointing to his eyes, then to the water, then to the spear. "Watch! Wait! Strike!" Taemin was the first to try copying the human method. Hyun-woo helped him make a spear from another branch, though the alien's claws made the carving easier than expected. Taemin stood at the water's edge, spear raised, trying to copy Hyun-woo's stance. But after 30 seconds, the pack leader grew restless and jabbed at the first fish he saw. The spear went wide, and the splash scared away every fish in the area. Taemin snarled in frustration. "Patience," Hyun-woo repeated, demonstrating again. This time he waited even longer, letting the fish come close before striking. Another successful catch. Dong-su was eager to try next. The young Valkyrie carved his own spear with surprising skill, his claws working the wood like natural tools. He took position by the water and tried to copy Hyun-woo's stillness. At first, Dong-su fidgeted and shifted his weight. His tail twitched with nervous energy. But gradually something changed in his posture. He began to truly watch the water, reading the movements of the fish below. A large silver fish swam close to his position. Dong-su raised his spear, waited for the perfect moment, and struck. The fish tried to escape, but the spear caught it cleanly. Dong-su let out a howl of triumph that echoed across the forest. The success motivated the others. Ji-hee, who had been skeptical of the weak human methods, now wanted her own spear. So Young, despite her injuries, insisted on trying too. Even Woo Jin, the wise elder, picked up a branch and began carving. What followed was the most patient hunting lesson. In Valkyrie history, Hyun-woo stood with each pack member, teaching them how to read the water, how to predict where fish would swim, and most importantly, how to wait for the right moment. Ji-hai learned to control her breathing, making herself as still as the rocks around the pool. So Young discovered that her injury actually helped, since she had to move slowly anyway. Woo Jin surprised everyone by being naturally gifted at reading the patterns of fish movement. As the day went on, the pile of caught fish grew larger. The pack began to understand that this quiet method could provide more food than their old ways of loud, chaotic hunting. They were not just learning to fish. They were learning a completely new way of thinking about hunting. By evening, they had caught enough fish to feed the entire pack properly for the first time in weeks. As they sat around Hyun-woo's camp sharing the meal, Taemin looked at the small human with new respect. The pack leader had always believed that strength and speed were the most important qualities for a hunter. But this strange alien had shown them that knowledge and patience could be even more powerful. The fish were still there, still abundant, but now the Valkyrie knew how to reach them. Dong-su practiced with his spear even after eating, perfecting his stance by the pool's edge. The young hunter was already thinking like a fisherman instead of just a predator. As the stars appeared in the alien sky, Hyun-woo realized he had taken the first step in changing not just how these creatures hunted, but how they thought about the world around them. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, but tonight, nobody would go to sleep hungry. 3 days had passed since the fishing lessons began, and the Valkyrie pack was growing stronger. Their ribs no longer showed through their fur, and so Young could walk without limping. But fish alone would not be enough to keep such large predators healthy for long. They needed meat from bigger prey. Hyun-woo had been studying the forest around their camp, looking for signs of the native animals. He found tracks in the soft mud near the stream, droppings under certain trees, and paths worn smooth by regular use. The creatures that made these signs were large enough to feed the whole pack, but they remained hidden during the day. On the fourth morning, Taemin approached Hyunwoo with obvious frustration. The pack leader gestured toward the forest and made hunting motions with his claws. His meaning was clear. They needed to hunt real prey, not just fish. "Show us," Taemin said in his rough voice, using one of the few human words he had learned. "Show us hunt big food." Hyunwoo nodded and gathered the pack around him. Using sticks and stones, he drew simple pictures in the dirt to explain his plan. The Velkari way of hunting was to charge together, roaring and snarling, trying to scare prey into running toward other pack members. It worked well in open spaces, but this forest was too thick with trees and rocks. "Old way too loud," Hyunwoo explained, making noise and then covering his ears. "New way quiet, silent, like fish hunting." The pack looked doubtful. Ji-hai flicked, her tail with annoyance. How could they hunt large prey without using their fearsome roars and coordinated charges? That was what made them successful predators. Hyunwoo led them to a clearing where he had found fresh tracks the night before. The prints belonged to something big, with hooves like a deer but wider. He knelt down and examined the trail carefully, showing the pack how to read the signs. "This animal walks here every day," he explained, pointing to multiple sets of tracks. "Same path, same time. We wait here, we hide, we catch." "Hide?" Dong-su asked, tilting his head. The concept seemed strange to creatures who were used to being the most dangerous things in any area. Hyunwoo began gathering materials from the forest floor. Dead branches, fallen leaves, strips of bark from certain trees. He showed the pack how to weave these materials together into simple coverings that would help them blend with their surroundings. Woo Jin was the first to understand. The old Velkari had lived long enough to remember times when prey was scarce, and hunting required more than just strength. He watched carefully as Hyunwoo demonstrated how to attach leaves and small branches to their fur. "Smart hunt," Woo Jin rumbled approvingly. Like old stories, before easy times. The pack spent the morning learning to move quietly through the forest. This was much harder for creatures their size than it had been for their human teacher. Every step seemed to snap a twig or rustle leaves. Their natural instinct was to move with confident power, not careful stealth. Hyunwoo showed them how to place their feet, how to test each step before putting their full weight down, and how to use the natural sounds of the forest to cover any noise they made. When wind rustled the leaves overhead, that was the time to move. When birds called to each other, their footsteps would be hidden. So Young surprised everyone by being naturally good at this new hunting style. Her injury had taught her to move slowly and carefully, and now that caution became an advantage. She could slip between trees like a shadow, her dark fur blending perfectly with the forest shadows. By afternoon, they were ready to try their first real hunt using human methods. Hyunwoo had found the perfect spot along the animal trail, a narrow passage between two large rocks where their prey would have to slow down. But instead of just hiding and waiting, Hyunwoo had another lesson to teach them. Using vines and flexible branches, he began constructing something the Velkari had never seen before, a trap. "What is this thing?" Ji-hai asked, watching him weave the materials together. "Snare," Hyunwoo replied. "Animal steps here, gets caught, cannot run away." The trap was simple, but clever. A loop of strong vine, hidden under leaves, would tighten around an animal's leg when stepped on. The other end was tied to a heavy rock that would drag behind the animal, slowing it down and making it easy for the pack to catch. So Young examined the snare with great interest. Her precise claws were perfect for the delicate work of weaving vines and setting the trigger mechanism. Under Hyunwoo's guidance, she built 2 more traps along the same trail. As the sun began to set, The hunters took their positions. Each pack member hid behind rocks or trees near the trail, covered with their leaf and branch camouflage. Then came the hardest part, waiting in complete silence. An hour passed, then 2. The Velkari were used to quick hunts that ended in minutes, not patient stalking that required them to stay motionless for long periods. Dongsu shifted restlessly. Taemin's tail twitched with barely contained energy, but Hyunwoo remained perfectly still, and gradually the pack learned to copy his patience. This was like fishing, but even more demanding. They had to think like their prey, predict where it would step, and resist every instinct to charge forward. Just as the last light was fading from the sky, they heard it. Heavy footsteps on the trail, coming closer. Through the gathering darkness, a large creature appeared. It looked like a cross between a deer and a buffalo, with 6 legs and a thick, shaggy coat. It was easily big enough to feed the entire pack. For several days, the animal walked confidently down the familiar trail, unaware of the danger waiting ahead. It stepped directly into So Young's carefully hidden snare. The trap worked perfectly. The creature stumbled as the vine tightened around its front leg, then panicked as it felt the heavy rock dragging behind it. Instead of being able to run at full speed, it could only lumber forward awkwardly. That was the signal for the pack to act. But instead of charging with roars and snarls, they moved like Hyunwoo had taught them, silently, from multiple directions, cutting off all escape routes. The bow. Hunt was over in minutes. The trapped animal had no chance against 5 coordinated predators who attacked without warning. For the first time in their lives, the Velkari had brought down large prey without a single roar or battle cry. As they shared their feast that night, Taemin looked at Hyunwoo with something approaching awe. The pack leader was beginning to understand that this small human was not just another animal. He was the ultimate predator, one who hunted with his mind instead of his claws. The morning after their successful trap hunt, Hyunwoo woke to find the Velkari pack tearing into the remaining raw meat from their kill. They ate with the desperate hunger of creatures who had known starvation, ripping and gulping down chunks of flesh as quickly as possible. Watching them eat, Hyunwoo realized there was still one more vital lesson he could teach them. The meat they were consuming was tough and hard to digest. Much of its nutritional value was locked away in fibers that their bodies had to work hard to break down. There was a better way. From the wreckage of his ship, Hyunwoo retrieved a small emergency fire starter and some metal pieces that could serve as a cooking surface. The pack watched with curiosity as he gathered dry wood and arranged it in a careful pile near their camp. When Hyunwoo activated the fire starter, the Velkari jumped back in alarm. Flames danced up from the wood, crackling and sending sparks into the air. To creatures of the forest, fire meant danger, destruction, the burning of their home. Taemin growled low in his throat, his blue markings pulsing with agitation. "Bad fire," he said, backing away from the flames. "Burns trees. Burns pack." "No," Hyunwoo said calmly, holding up his hands to show he was not afraid. "Good fire. Helpful fire. Watch." He picked up a piece of the leftover meat and placed it on a flat piece of metal over the flames. The meat began to sizzle and change color, filling the air with a smell unlike anything the Velkari had ever experienced. The pack approached cautiously, their sensitive noses twitching at the new scent. It was still clearly meat, but different, somehow, richer, more complex. Their mouths began to water despite their fear of the flames. "Fire makes food better," Hyunwoo explained, turning the meat so it would cook evenly. "Easier to eat, more strength for body." Dongsu crept closer, his young curiosity overcoming his instinctive fear. "How?" he asked simply. Hyunwoo thought about how to explain the science of cooking in terms the aliens could understand. "Heat breaks hard parts," he said, pointing to the meat, "like breaking rocks with claws, but inside food. Make soft. Make strong. The first piece of cooked meat was ready. Hyun-woo let it cool, then cut off a small piece and offered it to Woo-jin. The eldest pack member was often the most willing to try new things, having lived long enough to see many changes in the forest. Woo-jin sniffed the cooked meat carefully, then took a cautious bite. His yellow eyes widened with surprise. The meat was tender, easy to chew, and the flavor was completely different from raw flesh. It was somehow deeper, more satisfying. Good, Woo-jin rumbled, taking another larger bite. Very good. One by one, the other pack members tried the cooked meat. Their reactions were mixed at first. Ji-hai spat out her first bite, complaining that it tasted wrong. But hunger made her try again, and slowly she began to appreciate the difference. So young. Loved it immediately. The soft texture was perfect for her still healing body, and she found she could eat less cooked meat and feel more satisfied than when eating twice as much raw flesh. Tae-min was the most suspicious. As pack leader, he was responsible for the safety of his family, and this strange fire magic seemed dangerous. But when he saw how much the others enjoyed the new food, he finally agreed to taste it. The change in his expression was dramatic. The cooked meat was not just easier to eat, it actually gave him more energy. His body could use the nutrients more efficiently, and he felt stronger after eating a smaller amount. "How do we make this fire?" Tae-min asked, his practical mind already thinking ahead to when the human might not be there to help them. Hyun-woo spent the next several hours teaching them the basics of fire making. Using materials from the forest, he showed them how to create tinder from dry bark and leaves, how to build a proper fire structure, and how to keep flames alive by feeding them gradually. The Valkyries' claws made some parts of fire building easier than it would have been for human hands. They could scrape bark into fine tinder and arrange kindling with precision. But they had to overcome their instinctive fear of flames and learn to work carefully around the heat. Ji-hai became fascinated with the cooking process itself. She discovered that different parts of their prey tasted better when cooked in different ways. Thick chunks needed longer over the fire, while thin strips cooked quickly and became crispy. More importantly, she began experimenting with plants from the forest. Many of the herbs and roots that the pack had ignored before could be added to, cooking meat to create new flavors. Some made the food taste sharper, others added sweetness, and a few had complex tastes that she had no words to describe. "This plant makes meat taste like—" Ji-hai paused, struggling to find the right words. "Like rain smells, but in mouth." Hyun-woo smiled, understanding that she was discovering the concept of seasoning. On Earth, the use of spices and herbs had been one of humanity's great advances in food preparation. Now Ji-hai was making the same discoveries on an alien world. Woo-jin made perhaps the most important realization of all. As he watched Hyun-woo cook several large pieces of meat over the fire, the old Valkyrie understood that this process could preserve food for longer periods. "Cooked meat lasts?" he asked, pointing to pieces that had been thoroughly heated. "Yes," Hyun-woo confirmed. "Fire kills bad things in meat, stays good longer, can save food for many days." This was revolutionary thinking for the Valkyrie. They had always lived from hunt to hunt, eating everything immediately and then searching for the next meal. But cooked meat could be stored, rationed, and saved for times when hunting was difficult. The pack spent the evening around their fire, cooking the rest of their kill and experimenting with different cooking methods. They discovered that meat cooked slowly over lower heat was more tender than meat cooked quickly over high flames. They learned that adding certain leaves during cooking made the meat taste better and seemed to last longer. As the fire died down to glowing coals, the Valkyrie sat in a circle around the warmth, their bellies full of properly cooked food. For the first time in their lives, they were not just fed, they were truly satisfied. Tae-min looked across the dying flames at Hyun-woo, seeing him now not as a strange alien, but as a teacher who had given them gifts beyond measure. First patience in fishing, then wisdom in hunting, and now the mastery of fire itself. The pack leader was beginning to understand that strength and claws were not the only forms of power in the universe. Knowledge could be even more valuable than the sharpest teeth. 2 weeks had passed since Hyunwoo first crashed on Kalith, and the change in Taemin's pack was remarkable. Their fur was thick and glossy, their eyes bright with health, and they moved with the confident grace of well-fed predators. Word of their success had begun to spread through the forest. It started with distant howls in the night. Other Velkari packs calling across the darkness, their voices carrying notes of hunger and desperation. Hyunwoo learned that these calls were a form of communication, sharing information about hunting grounds and territory boundaries. On a misty morning, while the pack was practicing their fishing techniques at the stream, 3 strange Velkari appeared at the edge of the clearing. They were thin and ragged, their ribs showing through patchy fur. Their leader, a female with silver markings instead of blue, approached cautiously. "We smell cooked meat," she said to Taemin, her voice weak but determined. "We smell full bellies." "How?" Taemin looked at his pack, then at Hyunwoo. The human could see the conflict in the pack leader's yellow eyes. These strangers were from a rival territory, creatures who would normally be driven away or fought. But they were also starving, just as his own pack had been. "Show them," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Teach them." The decision went against thousands of years of Velkari instinct. Packs guarded their hunting secrets jealously, competing fiercely for territory and resources. But Taemin had learned new ways of thinking from his human teacher. "Come," Taemin said to the strangers. "We share knowledge. We share food." What followed was the first inter-pack knowledge exchange in Velkari history. The strange pack watched in amazement as Dongsu demonstrated proper fishing technique, standing motionless by the water until the perfect moment to strike. They gasped when So Young showed them how to weave snares from forest vines, her precise claws creating traps that seemed like magic. Ji-Hai took charge of the cooking lessons, proudly showing off her mastery of fire and seasoning. She had become an artist with herbs and spices, creating flavors that made even the toughest meat tender and delicious. "This leaf makes meat taste like flowers," she explained, adding dried petals to a cooking piece. "This root makes it taste like earth after rain. Mix them together, get something new." But it was Woo Jin who provided the most important lesson. The old pack member had spent days thinking about the deeper meaning of what Hyunwoo had taught them. Now he shared his wisdom with the newcomers. "Old way was hunt until food gone, then hunt again," Woo Jin said, his voice carrying the authority of age and experience. "New way is think ahead. Plan for tomorrow. Save food for hard times. Work together instead of compete." The visiting pack leader, who called herself Min Ho, listened with growing excitement. Her pack had been struggling for months, watching their young grow weak while prey became scarcer and more difficult to catch. "You would teach us all of this?" Min Ho asked. "Even though we are not your pack?" "Teacher showed us," Taemin replied, nodding toward Hyunwoo. "Now we show others. Knowledge grows when shared, like fire spreads from torch to torch." Over the next 3 days, Taemin's pack became teachers themselves. Each member specialized in sharing different human techniques. Dongsu was patient and encouraging with fishing students, helping them develop the stillness and focus required for success. So Young, despite her past injuries, proved to be an excellent instructor in trap-making. Her careful, methodical approach was perfect for teaching the complex art of reading animal trails and predicting behavior. Ji-Hai gathered groups around the cooking fire, showing them not just how to prepare meat, but how to experiment with different plants and create their own flavor combinations. She encouraged creativity and experimentation in ways that surprised even herself. Woo Jin became the philosopher of the group, helping the newcomers understand the mental changes required for these new hunting methods. He taught them to think, like their prey, to plan multiple steps ahead, and to value patience over speed. The most remarkable change was in Taemin himself. The pack leader discovered that he was a natural teacher, able to break down complex ideas into simple steps that others could follow. He found himself explaining not just what to do, but why each technique worked. Fish see shadows, Taemin explained to a group of eager students. Move too fast, make shadow dance, fish swim away. Stay still, become like rock, fish come close. News of the teaching camp spread quickly through the forest. Within a week, 2 more packs had arrived, then 3 more. Soon, there were over 30. Velkari gathered in the clearing, all learning human techniques from Taemin's original pack. Hyunwoo watched with amazement as his simple survival lessons transformed into something much larger. The Velkari were not just learning new hunting methods, they were discovering the power of cooperation and shared knowledge. Conflicts that might have led to territorial fights were resolved through discussion and compromise. Packs that had been enemies for generations found themselves working together, sharing resources, and combining their strengths. The most surprising development came when the different packs began combining their new knowledge with traditional Velkari wisdom. Each group had its own ancestral techniques and insights about the forest. When these were shared openly, new innovations emerged that neither humans nor Velkari could have developed alone. One pack knew how to read weather patterns in the behavior of certain birds. Combined with human food preservation techniques, this allowed them to prepare for storms days in advance. Another pack had knowledge of medicinal plants that, when properly prepared using fire, could heal injuries much faster than natural healing. As the gathering grew larger, Hyunwoo realized that he was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. These proud, solitary predators were becoming a true community, united by shared knowledge and mutual support. The human teacher had given them more than just fishing and cooking techniques. He had shown them that cooperation could be more powerful than competition, that teaching others made everyone stronger, and that the greatest predators were those who used their minds as well as their claws. Standing at the edge of the bustling camp, watching dozens of Velkari working together in harmony, Hyunwoo smiled. He had come to this world as a crashed stranger, but he was becoming something much more important. The bridge between species, the teacher who helped an entire race discover their true potential. 3 months had passed since Hyunwoo's ship crashed on Kalith, and the forest had been transformed. What began as a desperate attempt to help one starving pack had grown into a thriving community of over 100 Velkari from dozens of different territories. The original crash site had become the center of a new kind of settlement. Cooking fires burned throughout the day, tended by Velkari who had mastered the art of flame control. Streams had been modified with clever fish traps that provided steady food supplies. The forest paths were marked with symbols that showed the locations of the best hunting grounds and safest camping spots. Hyunwoo sat on a hill overlooking the bustling community, watching Velkari of all ages practicing the skills he had taught them. Young ones learned patience at the fishing pools, while their elders shared stories around the cooking fires. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months earlier. A familiar sound made him look up at the sky. The distant hum of engines grew louder until a human rescue ship appeared through the clouds, following the signal from his emergency beacon. The ship landed in the clearing near his crashed vessel, and 3 humans in exploration gear stepped out. Their leader, a woman, with captain's insignia, approached with obvious relief. "Dr. Hyunwoo?" she called. "I'm Captain Lee from the rescue ship Aurora. We've been searching for you for weeks. Are you injured? Are you safe?" Hyunwoo stood slowly, suddenly aware of how much he had changed during his time with the Velkari. His clothes were patched with materials from the forest, his skin was darkened by sun and weather, and he moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned to live in harmony with dangerous predators. "I'm safe," he replied, but his voice carried uncertainty. "More than safe, actually." Before the captain could respond, Tae-min appeared from the forest. The pack leader had grown even more impressive over the months, his muscles powerful from regular hunting success, his blue markings bright with health. He approached the humans without fear, having learned to trust Hyunwoo's judgment about his own kind. "These are your pack?" Tae-min asked, using the human words he had mastered over their time together. "Yes," Hyunwoo replied. "They came to take me home." The rescue team tensed at the sight of the massive predator, but Hyunwoo raised a calming hand. "He's a friend. They all are." Captain Lee stared in amazement as more Velkari emerged from the forest. Instead of attacking or even showing aggression, they gathered in a respectful circle around the humans. Some carried fishing spears, others had cooking implements, and all of them looked healthy and well-fed. "Dr. Hyunwoo," the captain said carefully, "what exactly has been happening here?" Over the next hour, Hyunwoo explained everything. He showed the rescue team, the fishing pools, the hunting trails, the cooking areas, and the storage caves where preserved food was kept for lean times. He introduced them to pack leaders who had become teachers, young Velkari who had mastered human techniques, and elders who had combined ancient wisdom with new knowledge. The rescue team was stunned. They had expected to find a survivor clinging to life on a hostile world. Instead, they found a thriving interspecies community that had solved problems both races had struggled with for generations. "This is incredible," Captain Lee said, watching. "Ji-hai demonstrate advanced cooking techniques to a group of fascinated Velkari. You've created something completely new here." That evening, as the rescue team shared a meal around one of the community cooking fires, Tae-min approached Hyunwoo with a serious expression. "You go with your pack now?" the Velkari leader asked. Hyunwoo looked around at the community he had helped create. Dozens of Velkari were living better lives because of what he had taught them, but more importantly, they had taught him things about cooperation, adaptation, and finding family in unexpected places. "I don't know," he admitted. "This place has become home." Tae-min nodded slowly, then did something unprecedented in Velkari culture. He knelt down, bringing his massive head level with Hyunwoo's, and spoke words that carried the weight of ancient tradition. "You are alpha of all packs," Tae-min said formally. "Not because you are strongest, because you are wisest, because you make all others stronger. We follow you wherever you choose to lead." The other Velkari around the fire began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that Hyunwoo had learned was their way of showing deep respect and agreement. Soon the humming spread throughout the entire camp, dozens of powerful voices joining in harmony. Captain Lee watched this ceremony with growing understanding. "You're not just a survivor here," she said to Hyunwoo. "You're their leader, their teacher, their bridge to a better future." The next morning brought Hyunwoo's decision. When the rescue team prepared to leave, he stood with them at their ship's ramp but did not climb aboard. "I'm staying," he announced. "There's still so much work to do here, so much potential to explore." Captain Lee nodded, having expected this choice. "The company will want a full report on what you've accomplished. This could change how we approach first contact with new species." "Send them this," Hyunwoo replied, gesturing to the bustling community around them. "Show them that cooperation creates more value than competition, that teaching others makes everyone stronger, that the best way to survive on a new world is to become part of it." As the rescue ship lifted off, carrying news of the unprecedented human-Velkari alliance back to Earth, Hyunwoo stood with his adopted pack and watched it disappear into the sky. "More humans will come," Tae-min observed. "Yes," Hyunwoo agreed. "And when they do, we'll be ready to teach them what we've learned here. How to live with the forest instead of fighting it. How to build community instead of just settlements." The months that followed brought exactly that. Human colonists arrived to find not a hostile world to be conquered, but a functioning society that welcomed them as students and partners. Valkyrie hunting techniques combined with human technology created innovations that benefited both species. Children of both races grew up together, learning from each other's strengths and compensating for each other's weaknesses. The forest moon of Calith became known throughout the galaxy as a model for successful interspecies cooperation. Years later, when visitors asked Hyun-woo about the secret to their success, he would smile and point to the fishing pools where human children learned patience from Valkyrie teachers, and to the cooking fires where alien and human flavors blended into something entirely new. "We didn't try to change each other," he would explain. "We just shared what we knew and let something better emerge from the combination. The strongest packs are always the ones that learn together." And in the evening light, as the sounds of a truly integrated community filled the air around them, it was impossible to argue with that wisdom.